Okay. I think I will do without it. Maybe like that. Maybe this one. Okay, so good morning, colleagues. I have an honor to start this day with my presentation. And first of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Mantas Daubaras. I'm a first-year PhD student in Vilnius Institute of History, Lithuanian Institute of History. My supervisor is Professor Rimantas Jankauskas, and my PhD will be focused on Neolithization of Lithuanian territory or Eastern Baltic territory via the perspective of bioarchaeological markers. So today I'm going to present you just a tiny fraction of my PhD, which I did during this first year of my studies. And the presentation is called New Data from Lithuanian Stone Age Burial Sites. So just quickly introduce some of you to the basic understanding of Stone Age situation in Eastern Baltic. It differs from Western Europe in that sense that hunting, gathering, and fishing remained a subsistent economy for a long time. And it was a genetic hideout of ancient genotypes, but I think maybe Alyssa will prove it wrong or correct. And yeah, the transition towards food-producing economy was very long-lasting. And yeah, there is this understanding that hunter-gatherers had a very complex hierarchic societies. So now to move on to what I started with in my presentation was the revision of already available bioarchaeological materials from Stone Age graves. Then, of course, we started systematic sampling of Stone Age burials for various lab analysis, such as AMS dating, stable isotopes, ancient DNA. And so I will present all these preliminary results, and at the end of my presentation, I will give initial thoughts on predictive modeling, which, if it works, will be used in a search for Stone Age burial sites in post-glacial landscapes. Okay, so if you would look into Lithuanian publications, you will see that there are quite a lot of, well, depends. There are approximately 20 sites where Stone Age human remains are said to be found. But in this map, you can see that I chose only 6, the ones that are marked in green dots, as a reliable sites, and they are reliable, considered to be reliable because we have archaeological excavation materials and skeletons from these sites. The rest of the sites are very unreliable, and only written sources are preserved saying that some human bones were found. So in the next slides I will speak only about during this analysis, I revised again all the materials from these 6 sites that you can see marked in green dots. And in the next slides, I will talk only about those sites that I found something new, something which wasn't known before. So let's move to Donkalnis burial site. It was, as you can see, excavated almost 30 years ago in 1981-82 by archaeologist Adomas Butrimas. And yeah, he found 7 graves. And when we started to revise the Stone Age materials from the graves, we discovered few interesting things. One of them was that we found a pregnant woman. It's of course nothing special, because we all know that people were multiplying in the same way in Stone Age. But simply from archaeological perspective, I will talk about it a bit later, but it's interesting case. And here you can see the reconstruction of the woman buried in grave number 1, and the skeletal remains of fetus. When she died, she was pregnant for approximately from 7.5 to 8 months. Here you can see that, oh, sorry, I will quickly get back to the previous slide. So there were 7 graves, undisturbed graves, with 9 individuals in them. And when we went through the disturbed graves from Donkalnis burial site, we found that there were at least 6 more individuals buried, but their graves were disturbed. And here you can see a topographic map created using LiDAR technology, and you can see that in the northern side of the burial site called Donkalnis, there's a clear pit, and this burial site was found in that way that people were starting to dig up gravel for construction works, and they stumbled upon graves. So they destroyed approximately at least 6 individual graves. So now to move on to the problems or questions that appear from this new material from Donkalnis is, as I mentioned already, pregnancy case from grave number 1. So I don't know, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I went through the Skataholm burial grounds materials and through Zveineki burial ground materials, and I couldn't find analogies of pregnant women buried. Unfortunately, I'm not that well, I don't know Polish material that well, so maybe there are some cases in there. And then there is this, I should say, mythical grave, grave number 2-3, which was interpreted by archaeologist Adomas Butrimas, who excavated the site as a double grave of the soothsayer or shaman, if you want, and his servant over here. So I would like to discuss a few aspects about this grave, and one of them is that when radiocarbon dates were used, so it appeared that soothsayer, this man, had a radiocarbon date of 6,377, 6,221 Cal BC, and the servant was radiocarbon dated to 4,700, so you can see a clear chronological difference. So the question remains, how does it appear that way, this chronological difference? So in his newest publication, Adomas Butrimas says that this chronological difference appeared from because he was using polymers to preserve bones of the servant woman, and after dating, it changed the date. But this explanation doesn't even withstand theoretical discussion, because all polymers are made from crude oil, and by the age of, if you would look into the C14 date of crude oil, so it would definitely be very old. And if polymers would change something, so it would definitely make the date older, not younger. So I mean, in my opinion, I wouldn't call it a double grave, and this is probably just a coincidence, and 2 graves were dug dug next to each other in different times. And then there is another one, it's another problem, but just a quick thought, is that grave number 5 received new AMS radiocarbon dates, but since 2 kids were buried in that grave, it is not clear which individual was sampled. But it's not that big a problem. And now another site, Kretuonas in northeastern Lithuania. So while working with these bones, bones from this site, we discovered probable cases of perimortal fractures and maybe even butchering. So I would like you all to, I don't know, to give thoughts on these, because we really would appreciate your opinion. So, so hopefully you can see. Not so much. Okay. So, anyway, if you will be interested, I can show you it a bit later for you on the computer screen. So, in grave number 2, there were probable perimortal fractures noticed on the right femur, and you can see they clearly show that the bone was fractured when still being a living tissue or alive, not skeletonized. And in grave number 2, there were similar cases as well. Just it's a really shame that the photos are not that well seen because of the sunny, beautiful Riga's weather. And then in grave number 5, on the left tibia, we noticed probably butchering marks. You can see 2 cuts of the same shape, and yeah, so again, what problems or questions do these new discoveries raise to us? Is that these perimortal fractures or probable case of butchering shows that something was done with Neolithic people after death, and something that we don't know to be happening in Eastern Baltic area. And for example, if we would be talking about Western Europe, like France, let's say, or something like that, we all know that passage graves appeared in Neolithic, and that people could be accessed after death, after burying. And right here, this case is really interesting because I don't know, it's a first in Lithuania, and we still have a lot to process to find the most probable explanation for what was happening with these individuals and why they were, I don't know, butchered, or maybe they were not. And yeah, just a quick remark. 2 graves from Kretuonas side had radiocarbon dates, which were made in Oxford. But the thing is that they should be considered unreliable because back in these days, ultrafiltration was not used, and these dates probably shows us dates of surrounding soil or something like that, but definitely not of the bone, because when we sent new samples for AMS dating, they said that carbon was not sufficient to produce AMS dates. So, and then initial thoughts on predictive modeling is, for example, in Scandinavia, in Denmark, it's a very common practice to have a predictive modeling, especially for the search of Stone Age archaeological settlement sites. And our aim is to create a predictive modeling for the search of Stone Age burials in the post-glacial landscapes of Eastern Baltic. And basically it will be based on the same proxies as in, let's say, Denmark, such as geology, different sloping, and proximity from water bodies. And the thing that I'm very, very hopeful about is of course, it might appear to be totally useless or totally useful. We will see, but to develop a non-invasive technique for the search of ochre or humus-filled graves, or let's say structures, because I don't know, I didn't manage to find any publications concerning this matter, but now in our institute we have magnetometer and we can use it for, not that I understand, but I hope that it will work, because ochre is a oxide of ferrous oxide, and it should have a different magnetism from the surrounding area. So probably magnetometer should show these structures filled with ochre. Of course, not all Stone Age burials were filled with ochre, but the ones that were, I am hopeful we will be able to find them quicker, quicker. Again, just quickly about future plans. So first of all is to finish all the postcranial materials and all the crania, because these are just preliminary results and I am not finished with them yet. Then I think it will surely be interesting for not only for me, but for some more archaeologists to publish these discoveries. And my ultimate goal is to suggest or enhance, I don't know, create, revise current models of Stone Age society in framework of modern theories, because theories that are created for, I don't know, for Rhine region and so on, they are surely not applicable to Eastern Balt. Your attention. Wait a second, please.
How often pregnant women are found, and from which period the pregnancy can be identified?
So, thank you for your question. Pregnancy cases are not that rare. Let's say in medieval cemeteries and so on. Simply from Stone Age burial sites, as I mentioned, I couldn't find them in surrounding areas. And from what age could it be identified? I'm not sure, actually. Maybe.
So just how thoroughly work is conducted, how thorough is excavation is done, because till now, regretfully, we have at least 3 or 4 cases of pregnancy in our archaeological materials, and all they were found in laboratory but not in the field, just by working on cleaning up and working skeletal materials. As usually, as archaeologists do not expect to find some artifacts in pelvic area, so they usually a little bit neglect that. But in principle, so it happens. Of course, all these are late stages of pregnancy, 7th, 8th, and 9th months of period.
Yeah, thank you. About the discrepancy between these two skeletons and the radiocarbon dating of this, do you have any isotopic values, carbon or nitrogen values concerning these bones? Because they might tell about the diet of this and possible marine or freshwater reservoir effect, which could affect the dates. Or then another possibility would be, of course, that every now and then some of these radiocarbon measurements are outliers. They are just wrong. I mean, there might be reason to remeasure them, and in addition to and then do also these isotopic measurements to assess this this dietary role of the.
Yeah, so thank you for your notes and questions. So, yeah, basically, I believe that more dates from Stone Age burials might be considered unreliable, and about feeding habits and stable isotopes. So, yeah, maybe in a future, maybe we will do it. And actually, we have some stable isotopes analysis done before, and yeah, but now I can't comment them.
Okay, thank you.
Comment. I already agree with you that these are two separate graves. It was my impression also when I looked at plans, and I asked why Mutrimas thought that it is one grave. So, yeah, and about this Cretonus and this butchering, colleagues from Russia, from Volga, Upper Volga area, came to Riga and discussed and asked me, met we in our excavations such a thing, and it was very special in late Neolithic. It appears such mass graves with butchered and heads separately and bodies separated, and so and such was happening things. So yeah, and I don't know. We must ask also our colleague Loza Ilze with Abora that you could speak with her about this. So such things happens, but. Yeah, thank you.
Any questions? So, the next speaker is Ilga Zagorska, and the topic is archaeological aspects of collective graves on Zvenik burial ground, Latvia.
Bet man jārāda. Būs kāds. Greetings to everybody in the morning. Our sun is already out, so you could see. I am thankful to colleagues for invitation to this conference, because I am not a bioarchaeologist, I am archaeologist, and I am from Stone Age. So, but I will tell you about most informative source, both for us, for all of us. It is burial ground, it is skeletons, and it is bones. And mainly I will touch our graveyard. Perhaps you have heard about it, Zvenik burial ground, and it is now quite totally excavated. And of course, there is also published interdisciplinary research. Perhaps you know this book. But we understood that only it is the mid in our research. A lot of questions still, we cannot answer to a lot of questions. And so we need to go further, deeper in interdisciplinary research. And so it's why I am here today, to show you problems what you must resolve. I guess. Paldies. I hope you heard me, yes? Oh. So here's northern Latvia and Zveniki, burial ground, its situation after last glaciation. Our drumlin field, one of the biggest in Baltic, and here is Lake Butnieki. At the end of the late glacial, it was bigger than today, and there is our Stone Age sites around the lake. So here's short history. It is researched, very long research, and also not only Latvian archaeologists. Last year's joined also Professor Larsson from Sweden, from Lund University, and now we have commonly totally 330 graves, and it covers more, approximately 5,000 years when they used this graveyard. And our anthropologists, of course, are taking part in investigations and estimate. So here, for graveyard is characteristic, mainly characteristic single graves, and also double graves. But today I will concentrate on these collective graves. These collective graves, which is a big problem. They are not very many. There are only 13 collective graves in the whole graveyard, but some of them we can understand what they represent, but some of these graves we cannot explain till now. So I am using field drawings, old field drawings, because it's easier to see the situation, but perhaps they were not so good and nice. So here these yellow ones are these collective graves. You see the situation, and this gravel drumlin and this excavated area. There is sites, corresponding sites, Neolithic, Mesolithic site, and graveyard, Mesolithic, Neolithic graveyard with collective graves. So one of the groups which we could understand and explain is adult persons with some children, and males and females and children, and it's perhaps understandable, perhaps some of parents with children. So it's one of the graves. In the mid is grown up person, female, and two children on both sides. And this one of the childs have very nice axe. I must add that all child graves are very carefully arranged. There is a great care. It's characteristic for our Stone Age cemetery. So next is also a little more problematic, but also if we saw this adult male was on the surface, and when we took this away, it's very difficult to see, then it was one grown-up person, adult person, with three children on both sides, and here on the head region. This was very good, arranged with two spandants and with ornamented spearhead. And we thought it is all in one time simultaneous burial, but perhaps this also is connected with, because this second layer, they were not disturbed, absolutely not disturbed. And so it is question, it could be also in one time, it could be some god or family or so, but yeah, it is a little difficult to explain, but our archaeological explanation that it is common grave. Next one, there is a little disturbed. There was this gravel extraction. It was cut and only part, but you see two male on the first layer, and down is female. In ochre, these were in black as these two, but female was in ochre and with this spear head. So also this female was absolutely not disturbed. It was very carefully laid, these both men and then this woman. We saw it is collective grave, simultaneous collective grave with three persons. So next, it is our unique grave with 5 male persons, only males, and they are in one grave, and it's also they differ from all other graves, collective graves, and also for single and double graves, because they are all on prone position, on stomachs. They are left all together. Only one has a little ochre, but all others in a black earth. And this earth is from settlement site, but they have no grave goods, but they have injuries. They have injuries, some injuries. I will tell later. And they are dated. Approximately, they are some in one time, but perhaps they also must be, we must look at reservoir effect, because it's in Zvenik is still unsolved problem, because new investigations which were made in Kiel University by John Meadow showed that this reservoir effect would cover quite big period. So perhaps they could be in one time, all this. Yeah, about injuries. Professor Jankauskas analyzed this one grave, this male, and he said it's healed wound. And so we thought that it is very experienced warrior. He died, at first he survived, and then he was killed together with all others. And these other samples, they are more, they rely on archaeology. There is this flint in vertebra, in position which we discovered it was in vertebra, and also this pelvis part was with such a holes. I haven't seen in no different ways. I looked all through materials, but never met such a holes in other graves and other skeletons. So archaeologists, from archaeological aspect, this is grave from some barriers or some violence there we met. But this is only one grave with such traits in all the burial ground. Next one. Now we move to Middle Neolithic, to this, there is some 4 or 5 such collective graves with new inventory, with flint spearheads, with a very rich bone inventory, with amber jewelry, and with pottery vessels. So it's quite different set of archaeological grave goods and also new traditions. You see, this votive deposit, there is broken things, very intensive ochre, and you see down here also this fragment of this votive deposit. It's new such a appearance of such a tradition. So it's quite different burials and very difficult to explain. Adult male, female, and younger persons also in one grave, as you see here, and some of them are dated also. It is already Middle Neolithic. So next, also one of these collective graves with all these traditions which I mentioned previously, with very rich amber jewelry, and also with males and females, and in the mid there was also small children And our interpretation archaeological is amber. Perhaps there was also some child buried and wrapped in some food which was ornamented with amber jewelry. So perhaps there are 7 persons, 2 children and 5 adult persons. It's a very big collective grave. And also, which was in previous grave, and in this grave, there was near the head 2 amber rings which fell out of eyes. In some graves we find out these amber rings in eyes and covered with clay mask. You see here, it is the 3rd collective grave with ambers and with flint inventory, and also the child and 4 grown-up persons. And amber rings, it was this, how we discovered it, take off clay mask, and there was this amber rings. So it is in, mainly it is, all these rings are in 4 male graves, only in male graves, on the eyes of males, grown-up males. And here we saw these datings, and this dating is the earliest of this group, and perhaps it shows the time where appear these people, this group of inhabitants in our territory. The last one of this group, but here is only 2 males buried, and by 1 male there is small child on the shoulder. And why it is to this group? Because there is the same flint inventory, the same flint arrowheads, and also this have these 2 amber rings in his eye sockets. And this is how looks our amber when it is taken out of gravel layer, because it's very difficult to understand that it is amber. But we managed to put it together and to show the forms, only forms, how it looks, how these pendants and all other jewelry looks. So here is territory of this comb ceramic. It is met in Finland, in northwestern Russia, in all Baltic, not so much in Lithuania, but mainly in Latvia and Estonia. And I must remind that in Finland also was met these burials, but only without any bones, because acid soil, but there was these amber things and also these rings at the place where must be head are 2 these rings in some of the graves. And so the same tradition was in northwestern Russia, Onega Lake region, where find cemeteries and also with 2 rings in the head region. So it's comb ceramic, and you see relative cultures are met to the Ural Mountains and also on the western coast of Sweden. So the last group of our collective graves, it is one of these. This on the left side, there is also some is collective grave, 2 persons on the first layers, 2 persons on the second layer. But it is there we could understand that these 2 destroyed the lower layer. It was successive grave. It was not in one time. It was not simultaneously buried. We could distinguish very clearly, because this lower layer was destroyed, absolutely destroyed. Only parts of skull and down it was destroyed. So there is a second example of collective graves. They were without any grave goods, then only skeletons. And perhaps here you could see 2 grown-up persons and 2 children in between. It is difficult to date, but under this, in some 40 centimeters deeper, was one of these collective graves from Middle Neolithic. So we conclude that this could be late Neolithic or even later, this grave. Similar to this group belongs also one very destroyed grave. There was fundament of house. It was half under the house, and it was very, very destroyed. But why I am showing you, it is also without any grave goods, and some of these bones were taken to Lund's University for dating, and it shows early Neolithic data. So it is possibly that such graves without, mass graves without any grave goods, 4, 5, and 6 persons perhaps in one grave, they met all the Stone Age, from early Neolithic to the late Neolithic characteristic. And so here is some small diagram of these graves, of these datings, the earliest with very intense ochre, and also it's later with some of adult persons with children. Then this our unique grave with injuries. This characteristic for Middle Neolithic from comb ceramic graves, only from this period, only from Middle Neolithic period. And then these mass graves without any grave goods. Perhaps they were existing all the Neolithic period. So in this period was very, very different ways of burials, and yes, and it is difficult to explain. So the last slide. So, as I said, I have no resolutions. It is a question to you. Who they were, why were they buried together, what were their social status, and archaeologists, of course, expressed a lot of opinions, a lot of suggestions, but always kind of speculations only. As you see about that is family, perhaps it is some kinship relations, violence, about some epidemics or some sacrifices also, and difficulties in difficult times, and then these collective graves without any grave goods. And of course, very interesting is this companionship in death. Perhaps some idea taken from Shakespeare. And of course, more profound and interdisciplinary research is required. So all these more datings, more isotopic research and explaining reservoir effect in datings and DNA analysis and so. And so we archaeologists hope on you. Thank you for.
Your questions, please.
Okay, is this better? So, the question is about the red ochre that you see was put down as a pigment. And I'm wondering, do you only see the red ochre as such, as a powder, or do you see it mixed with something like egg to make a paint, to make it more sticky?
Yes, we have made analysis, chemical analysis, and it is mixture, it is specially prepared mass prepared. There is clay, there is iron oxide, and there is also some crystalline quartz and so on. But in our book publishing, in this graveyard is published in English Stone Age by my husband Francis Zagorskis, and there is this analysis published, all analysis with diagrams and all explained.
Okay, thank you.
Please, Professor Jankauskas.
Just concerning all these hypotheses about these collective graves, so have you discussed such a possibility of just seasonality of death? Just if these were deaths in winter, so and these bodies were kept for a while and then buried when Earth was thawed.
It's possible, but of course, what I said, this isotopic analysis more and more needed, and there was some suggestions about seasonality. Gunilla Eriksson expressed them, but of course it must be proved and more deeper investigated. But it's a good idea. Thank you.
Just I would like to express doubts about these lesions in this one grave. For me, for pelvic lesions, they look like more post-mortal taphonomic changes. And for this flint embedded, so X-ray I think should be made, just to see how deep this flint goes inside and the shape and so on. Because now it's hard to say. Maybe this could be also just taphonomy.
No, thank you. I already waited for you, this comment, because we quarreled about it. Of course, I cannot say from anatomic side and so, but I am judging from archaeological evidences. So it is not rare in northern Europe, in Tevyak, in western France, is this example when flint is embedded in vertebrae. So it's one example from Germany. So it could be so. And these wounds, the holes in this pelvis region, I kept in my hands all skeletons and all bones, and never in others were not such holes. If they are natural, why not in some others from 330, but only in this grave? But of course, I cannot prove it. It's only archaeological decisions, and perhaps you are right. Thank you.
Is there any questions? Thank you once more. As a Keita. As a Keita Fascia hasn't arrived, the next speaker will be Daļa Lekstiņa with a topic researching the paleodietary practices in Latvian Stone Age and Bronze Age, context and perspective.
Good morning, dear colleagues. So, apparently, chronologically, I will link previous papers with the following one. And, okay, I will start. Paleodietary practices of the Stone and Bronze Age people have been of a great interest probably since the beginning of a systematic research of these periods. This is of course due to the fact that the daily diet is one of the most important components of the human everyday life. It is especially a relevant topic when investigating peoples of the earliest prehistoric periods, because it reflects not only the available natural resources but can also indicate and illustrate different cultural factors, traditions, social organizations, and other questions. During the 20th century, numerous studies have been conducted on the paleodiet of Stone and Bronze Age people. Firstly, it is due to the many archaeological excavations of Latvian Stone and Bronze Age sites, both settlements and grave fields. Especially many excavations took place in the second half of the 20th century, therefore providing archaeologists with a significant amount of new data. From archaeological point of view, some of these findings were particularly useful for solving questions of paleodietary practices of prehistoric people. Unfortunately, archaeological material, due to its preservation conditions, is fragmentary and accordingly sometimes can be even misleading. Therefore, important and fruitful has been collaboration between archaeologists and specialists from other sciences like paleozoology, paleobotany, paleogeography, and geology. These sciences can provide important data that is indispensable for studying diet and subsistence economy of the prehistoric people. Therefore, paleodietary research has been wide and complex, strongly marked by the interdisciplinarity. Although this approach has provided archaeologists with a great amount of basic data for further interpretations, many of the methods still should be considered indirect and therefore not always fully reliable. Further, I would like to familiarize you with current leading theories and use in this field within Latvian archaeology, and also to highlight the most problematic questions still waiting to be explored. So, firstly, about the Upper Paleolithic period. Research history of Upper Paleolithic in Latvia is marked by the fact that the archaeological evidence from this period was recognized comparatively lately. During the first half of the 20th century, archaeologists were not certain that the several finds could be undoubtedly referred to the Upper Paleolithic. However, starting from the 60s and especially during the 70s, archaeologists who were studying Stone Age material in Latvia, for example, I would name our colleagues Ilze Loze, Lucija Vankina, Vladimir Surtans, and especially Ilga Zagorska, came to agreement that there are evidence that suggests human activity in the territory of Latvia as early as the Younger Dryas period, that is the end of the Ice Age. Therefore, alongside with other aspects, the question of paleodialect of these people could be raised. There are no known burials from the Paleolithic period in Latvia. However, archaeological and paleozoological material could shed some light on this question. The archaeological material leaves no place for doubts that Upper Paleolithic people were hunter-gatherers and likely fisherers too. Hunting tools and fragments have been found in an affirmative quantity. From paleozoological perspective, reindeer bone findings dated to the Upper Paleolithic proves that similarly to other North Europe territories, this animal was hunted in Latvian territory too. Common sense dictates that the reindeer could not be the only food resource. However, current archaeological and bioarchaeological material is insufficient for further significant research for the paleodietary practices in Latvia during Upper Paleolithic period. Therefore, we can put our hopes on new archaeological evidence that could be found in the future. Next, I would like to talk about Mesolithic and Forest Neolithic. Mesolithic and Neolithic periods in Latvia are represented with more complete archaeological and bioarchaeological data, and therefore providing broader platform for addressing paleodietary questions. Amount of the archaeological and bioarchaeological material have been sufficient to conclude that these people were foragers. Paleozoological material from this period settlements suggests that local wild fauna was widely used for hunting and fishing. Bones of elk, roe deer, boar, bear, fox, beaver, hare, and other mammals have been recovered, as well as a wide range of different bird and waterfowl bone material. As the Mesolithic settlements were generally located closely near water, fish bones have been found in a considerable amount. Due to the collaboration with paleobotanists, a more extensive picture about gathering could be drawn. Plant remnants at settlements suggest that Mesolithic people used wide diversity of available edible flora, which besides have been determined with an amount of the pollen analysis studies. However, from this multidisciplinary data, it is not possible to determine the importance of different foraging aspects in Mesolithic people life, which were of a more significance: hunting, fishing, or plants gathering, how much vegetarian-like their diet was, and where proteins consumed more from terrestrial or water resources. It is believed that some of these questions could be answered with different bioarchaeological approaches, for example, chemical analysis, also phytolith analysis I could name. Phytolith analysis for samples from burials, which could provide direct evidence for the consumed plants, has not been conducted for Latvian Stone Age material. Unfortunately, these analyses could be worthwhile only if samples are taken directly from the definite places of human skeletal remains. Therefore, future research possibilities with this method could be examined only when new Stone Age burials are discovered and excavated. Chemical analysis of human skeletal remains, on the other hand, has been applied to study paleodietary practices. At the very beginning of the 21st century, stable isotope analyses were applied for Latvian Stone Age material. Several human and animal bone samples from the well-known Zvejnieki Stone Age archaeological complex were analyzed. This research was conducted in collaboration between Latvian, Swedish and Estonian researchers Ilga Zagorska, Gunilla Eriksson and Lembi Logas, and others. Firstly, this research was a proof that stable isotope analysis is suitable for Latvian material. The results, though limited in numbers and therefore not presentable for wider conclusions, still significantly addressed gaps in our knowledge of Stone Age people dietary practices. Also, some new innovative perspectives for this matter were marked. For example, Zagorska and Eriksson write that there was a significant variation in the stable isotope ratios for different individuals. However, the emphasis on the terrestrial and, what is important, freshwater resources were noted. It is therefore interesting to compare these results with archaeological indicators, because, on the contrary, grave goods from Zvejnieki burials demonstrate emphasis on the hunting, not on the fishing. So this might illustrate the situation when everyday practice and norm are not in accordance. Interesting results provided samples from burial number 165. These individuals' stable isotope ratios were significantly different and indicated marine diet. Therefore, a case of an individual migration could be distinguished. Although the stable isotope analysis proved to be fruitful and marked field for further investigation with this method, no following studies have been published on this topic so far. Latest published chemical analysis approach to paleodietary studies was a PhD thesis of Vita Radovića. It was in 2012. This research was supervised by chemist Professor Artūrs Vīksne and bioarchaeologist Gunita Zariņa. Among other, Vita Radovića analyzed trace elements in several human bone samples from Zvejnieki burials. It was such elements as zinc, strontium, barium, cadmium, copper, and vanadium. The results generally coincided with previously obtained data and interpretations. Question about Neolithic people and farming. The beginning of farming in the territory of Latvia has been of a great interest during the whole 20th century and is still a relevant topic nowadays. Excavations at archaeological sites have provided rich archaeological and bioarchaeological material. Therefore, collaboration with paleozoologists and paleobotanists have delivered quantity of data regarding animals and plants that were used for food. For example, see Latvian archaeologist Ilze Loze writings on this topic. However, this collaboration has been fruitful also regarding the question of the beginning of farming, because there have been found some domesticated animal bones dated as early as the Middle Neolithic. For example, at Zvidzes settlement, domesticated animal bones composed 8.9% of all faunal remains. Therefore, the model of introducing the farming in the territory of Latvia became a quite complicated topic. The current view is that foraging was the main subsistence economy until the very end of the Neolithic. This is considered to be due to the mild and warm climate which provided plenty of food resources. However, the idea of agriculture, in this case in a form of a small herd of domesticated animals, was familiar for at least some of the communities living in Latvia at the Middle Neolithic. Furthermore, it is considered that at the late Neolithic, with the emergence of the corded ware and battle axe culture, idea of farming became even more established, further during the Bronze Age reaching the main role for subsistence. However, the concept of corded ware and battle axe culture people as partly farmers is still problematic. There have been discussions on the exact form of the farming these people practiced. Proposed models vary. Some determine corded ware and battle axe culture people as pastoralist nomads. This view is supported by the findings of small stock, that is sheep or goat and pig bones. In turn, there are archaeological and bioarchaeological indications of existing agriculture at the late Neolithic. For example, findings of querns and pollen analysis that indicate cereal. Some archaeologists have argued that concept of the corded ware and battle axe culture people as farmers should be even completely rejected. However, the presence of domesticated animal bones and other bioarchaeological data proves at least small-scale animal husbandry. A aforementioned stable isotope study included as well samples from 5 late Neolithic burials ascribed to corded ware and battle axe culture people. It should be noted, though, that one of these 5 individuals was an infant. So the stable isotope ratios differed significantly from other Neolithic individuals' results, indicating that the diet had changed from significantly freshwater, as it was in earlier Neolithic, to more terrestrial diet, with probable indications of consumption of animal husbandry products. Eventually, the discussion of the corded ware and battle axe culture people, their subsistence mode and dietary practice is still a not completely explored topic and calls for further research. And about the Bronze Age, archaeological material, for example, multiple findings of querns and other agricultural related material, suggests that during the Bronze Age farming became more and more important part of the subsistence mode. Interesting picture forms if we compare paleozoological data from Latvian Bronze Age archaeological sites. According to archaeologist Andrejs Vasks, early Bronze Age settlement site Lagaža shows statistically significant decrease in the domesticated animal bones if compared with the earlier Neolithic. In Lagaža, it was only 1.7% domesticated animal bones. However, only a few centuries later, at the late Bronze Age site Brikuļi, domesticated animal bones compose the majority, 86.7% of all animal bones. Therefore, it is significant that both Lagaža and Brikuļi are located at the valley of the lake Lubāns. Therefore, paleozoological findings highlight the complexity, heterogeneity, and probable small-scale locality of the farming introduction to the territory of Latvia, a process that still calls for further archaeological and bioarchaeological research. To summarize, I have introduced you with the main researches done for determining paleodietary practices at the Stone and Bronze Age in the territory of Latvia, as well as highlighted topics that open opportunities for further complex investigations and probable significant discoveries. As have demonstrated previous studies, the most significant discoveries are possible when interdisciplinary approach is conducted, involving both archaeological data and various bioarchaeological methods. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Questions, please. Thank you once more. And now we move to Bronze Age, and the speaker will be Markku Oinonen. Please, Markku.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for an opportunity to be here and talk about this investigations of Kivutkalas Bronze Working Center. My name is Markku Oinonen. I'm coming from Finnish Museum of Natural History. And then this work is based on very long-term work on our Latvian collaborators, Professor Vasks and then Gunita Tsarina. And then we kind of add our contribution by making radiocarbon measurements and stable isotopic studies of the human bones. And this presents kind of results of the pioneering study on that direction. A couple of words about the cemetery in Hilford. It's got a unique context. This map is kind of a little bit possibly outdated already, but shows the location of the Kivutkalns kind of in the middle of East Baltic Bronze Age traditions in the island of Dol within the western Dwina River, which has been, of course, a large kind of a trade route as well. It doesn't exist anymore. It was excavated in, I think, in late 60s already. But now under power plant water passing, so you cannot reach it anymore. It has been considered as the largest late Bronze Age bronze working center in Latvia, and 1/3 of archaeological artifacts are related to bronze working. And based on this archaeological study, it has been considered as the cemetery was there first, and then later on the hill fort was founded on top of the cemetery, and they're kind of chronologically in order. And as I said, this work is based on this very long-term work on the Kivutkalns context, but now just recently we published the paper on this, and you can find more information from that paper. I'm talking about that. This shows the previous natural scientific analysis that's been done, basically radiocarbon studies, and only on hill fort. So there's radiocarbon measurements on charcoal, and the 7 dates altogether, none on the cemetery, but then this dates this hill fort to 1000 Cal BC to the early days of the Common Era. And actually, there's lots of archaeological finds from the cemetery to be studied. So this shows the plot of it. There's something like 230 graves excavated from that. And then, okay, I come back to that later on, but I already show here a couple of graves from which these dates and measurements were done. What I'm talking about in this. In addition to that, recently there was a couple of other radiocarbon dates performed, but I'm not going to discuss about that yet in this work. So a little bit about the techniques. There's kind of a long-term union of carbon isotopes via carbon cycle. So if you do radiocarbon study, you standardly do also this stable isotopic ratio measurement, this carbon-13, carbon-12 ratio measurement. So the union comes, of course, via atmospheric carbon dioxide, because this via carbon cycle, this stable carbon isotopes are present within the atmosphere, and then radiocarbon is produced by the cosmic rays. Cosmic ray interactions within the atmosphere, and then they mingle together, and then they end up in the plants and animals, humans, so we have food chain. So this isotopic ratio is considered to be a kind of a sample isotopic fractionation correction for the radiocarbon measurements. And that is why all these radiocarbon laboratories, they provide usually also isotopic information. That's also the case within our laboratory of chronology, within this Finnish Museum of Natural History. So we do radiocarbon analysis, and then we do also stable isotopic measurements, and for example for wood, bones, and all kinds of organic material for archaeological, geological, environmental, scientific purposes. And then we, specifically for bones, we have now developed this technique for collagen extraction further with the University of Tübingen. And there's her Bocherans who is our collaborator in there. So a little bit more about radiocarbon until it's kind of a long introduction to the subject. If you do lots of radiocarbon dates, you can do so-called Bayesian cultural or phase modeling of these archaeological cultures, for example. And that is just an example. Don't mention too much about these numbers, but this is an example what you can do. If you have dozens of dates, for example, you can start to extract the phase starts and phase ends of the cultural phases. And that is kind of a very long-term goal of our laboratory, that we aim to produce kind of dozens of radiocarbon dates on each culture, and then eventually we could start to make kind of a cultural spectra of these cultures, cultural phases, the starts of the phases and ends of the phases and durations of the phases, and then you can start to if you have this kind of archaeological spectrum very well dated and timed, and then you can eventually, when you start to do also this kind of, for example, DNA studies, even linguistic analysis, you could start to compare these archaeological dating, cultural datings to these even genetical datings. But that's of course a very long-term goal of us. But that is kind of a guideline within our studies, what we perform within the laboratory. Just for the background. Coming back to the carbon isotopes, it's kind of implementation of the carbon into the plants is kind of first step of the food chain. And there's a carbon isotopic ratio about the 13C is minus 8 per mil within the atmosphere. And eventually via photosynthetic process, it ends up in the plants with the carbon isotopic ratio of something like minus 25. And that's then when you consider nitrogen isotopes, nitrogen is a little bit more complicated because there's a solid and there's a liquid and even gaseous substances which eventually end up as components within the body which have nitrogen. So that's a little bit more complicated process, but eventually if you plot these bone collagen carbon, stabilized carbon and nitrogen measurements within this kind of B-plot, you get this kind of picture. If you start from the plants, terrestrial and marine plants have different photosynthetic carbon source, and that's why they have a slight difference between the carbon isotopic ratio. And then when one starts to consume plants, there's trophic level steps which increase the carbon isotopic ratio within the collagen, both in slightly in carbon, but more on nitrogen, maybe 3 per mil per trophic level step. And then you have a different carbon origin and length of food chains and bone collagen values of marine and then terrestrial species differ quite a lot. And then you have consumed freshwater fish, you have this very long aquatic food chain, you get higher nitrogen values, but the carbon because the source of the carbon is practically atmospheric and terrestrial origin, so you get the carbon isotopic ratios roughly the same as in the terrestrial bones. And when you do the measurement, quite a lot of chemistry first, and then you have eventually collagen to be measured, and you divide larger part to the radiocarbon measurement and a smaller part to the carbon and nitrogen isotopic measurements. Eventually we get to the results. So that now summarizes all the results what we have. These are the old ones from the Hillfort charcoal, and then also from the Hillfort we have three animal bone measurements going roughly to the same date as these old charcoal measurements. We also have the isotopic values for these animal bones, and then we have 5 individuals from the cemetery. And actually, these radiocarbon dates, they more or less are the same as in these animal bones, and also overlap with this Hilfort dates, and that's a bit of puzzling for us, because there was this original assumption that this cemetery was there before, and then Hilfort was built on top of that. If you do this, of course we have a quite limited data set at the moment, but if you do that Bayesian modeling of that, and here's the plot of the archaeological interpretation of the first of all cemetery, and then this is here that gives the start of this cultural phase or the cemetery phase, and then this gives the stop. But in this, because we have the limited data set, you should be interested mostly on the sum distribution of this is the sum of all this individual calendar year probability distributions of the radiocarbon dates. So this is the cemetery, and Hilfort the same. That's the archaeological interpretation first. And then if you look at the Hilfort sum distribution, they are practically overlapping, Hilfort and the cemetery. So this challenges, of course, this archaeological interpretation of the cemetery predating the Hilfort. As I said, dataset is still limited, and the final answer needs more analysis, as usually it is the case. And then there's one thing which makes this a little bit problematic within this period of time. When you do radiocarbon dating, you need to convert the radiocarbon dates to calendar years, and you use it via calibration curve, which has been measured by measuring radiocarbon amounts of wood tree rings, when you know the years, calendar years, and that actually corresponds to this kind of a plateau of the radiocarbon calibration curve. So if your date is roughly, radiocarbon date hits within this period of time, you always get quite broad probability distribution, spanning from something like 800 BC to 400 BC because of this plateau in the calibration curve. And that makes it a little bit complicated, this analysis. And that's why we need more data on this until we can settle this issue. And the isotopic results I have here combined some other contexts also. So there is, for example, you can find the references from this paper. There's lots of references from the Swedish guys, Eriksson and Lidén. They've been measuring this collagen isotopic ratios of Swemb, Sweden. Then there's from Gotland, and then from Svenjäki. And Swemb has been considered to be quite mainly terrestrial context. And Gotland Västerbres has been considered to be marine mostly. And then we have Svenjäki, which has a very strong freshwater flavor. And that actually shows this the same as I showed you before. So terrestrial part is here. Also the Kivutkal's animals are here, as they should be, because they are terrestrial animals. And then we have Swemb. And then Svenjäki is here where the freshwater contribution should put them. And Kivutkal's humans are here. And they kind of fall within this line between the mostly terrestrial and mostly marine diet. And then you can also estimate what is the fraction of, for example, marine fraction based on this information. And then you get the roughly over upper limit of this marine character of about 25% for these individuals. You could do correction also. You could do this kind of marine correction for the radiocarbon date, because the marine contribution a little bit tends to get these radiocarbon dates older, and you can do correction to these dates, and that doesn't affect too much about these results, and especially it doesn't help within this contradictory information, because it brings this human bone radiocarbon dates even younger, so that doesn't help us. But anyway, That's the result. We have an interesting case in there. There's a double burial, burial number 79. There's a male, individual and child. And if you now assume that first of all, these dates are equal for these two. And then, of course, they are in the same burial. And then this isotopic information is also consistent with that they would be a father and child. Because if you think that the father and the mother has eaten the same, if you assume the mother has the same isotopic measurement pair as the male, then the very young child should be here because this nitrogen value and also carbon value is a little bit increased due to breastfeeding. So maybe there's a nuclear family in that. So summary, as I told you, there's somewhat challenge between the archaeological and this interpretation of the dating measurements, but still small data set. And then we have isotopic results. They fall in between the terrestrial and marine extremes, mainly terrestrial with a slight marine character. And then, based on this information and studies, we have asked okay, there are a couple of more dates and isotopic measurements coming by Andres and Kunita. And then there's a new project launched in 2014, actually in the spring. And that's a kind of an outlook of that. It's funded by Finnish Cultural Foundation. And we try to make, of course, further radiocarbon datings and the stable isotopic measurements on cemetery on Hillfort. And then also we aim to measure some DNA. This first of all this paternal and maternal lineages, and then of course make the radiocarbon dating and stable isotopic studies of these individual bones, where we can extract DNA, to get this kind of information to be used in establishing this kind of very accurately dated phylogenetic trees for this Y chromosome and the mitochondrial DNA lineages, based on Bayesian inference. And then, of course, we try to assess also the cultural contacts between the Eastern Fennoscandia and East Baltic, because that also interests the Finnish Cultural Foundation very strongly. That's why we got the funding for that. But that's practically the outlook of that, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Any questions? Oh, please, Valdis Verziņš.
Thank you. That was very interesting. My question is about the possible contribution to the stable isotope results of the use of consuming migratory fish, because the river Daugava or Western Dvina has been in historical times very important as an area of salmon fishing and fishing for other migratory fish. I suppose, could this explain the marine component? Because I understand that salmon, for example, it feeds essentially in the sea. So that should be marine.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's a very good point. It could have a contribution in that, and there's lots of studies actually by University of Jyväskylä in Finland from the Baltic Sea, especially this Botnian Bay fish, and we have some contacts to these guys, and we should actually sit down and check this database what they have, and try to estimate this kind of we could do this kind of a marine character estimation based on these isotopic values what they have found from the flesh of the fish of the Botnian Bay and the Baltic Sea in general. But that's a good point, and we are actually struggling with the same problem in Finland, because there's one interesting context of Levänluhta spring burial in southern Ostrobothnia in Finland, and there's a river flowing very close to that, and there seems to be slight marine character of these individuals which have been buried in there, and we actually thinking about the same possibilities but it's complicated because then you, of course you might have also a freshwater character. Here it doesn't show too much freshwater character, but in Finnish context it's even more complicated because there's also freshwater character involved. So it's tough business, but that's a good point what you said.
Your question?
I found this very interesting. What I'm wondering about, I have a very vague grasp of radiocarbon dating, I have to confess, but what is the prior you use for the Bayesian modeling of the radiocarbon dates? Because I thought this is the most precise dating we have at the moment, so what's the prior then?
If you consider individual radiocarbon dates and the individual calibrations, there's no prior, but then you could do, in principle, whatever prior you want, but in this what I showed you, this particular data set, we didn't do any. We just assumed that all the calendar years could be equally possible. There's no prior at all. So it's called, I don't know if it's called uniform prior or whatever prior. Yeah, but I did also this estimation. I assumed that this cemetery was predating the hill fort, and then I ended up in the situation that according to the model it was not possible based on this data what we have. So that's why I mean that's why there's this contradiction that we're a little bit puzzled about this result at the moment, and we need more datings. But that's true what you said. You could put whatever prior you want, and but you have to also understand that affects the result what you get. So that you have to understand.
Thank you. More questions? Thank you once more. Now we turn to Iron Age. Next speaker Aija Vilka. Children, age and gender, two divergent examples from the middle and late Iron Age centuries in Latvia.
So hello everybody. My name is Aija, and I'm very honored to be here today and to present my research, which is not quite bioarchaeology, which is more archaeology, but I'll try to infiltrate this in our conference. So I'm now a PhD student, and I'm working on my PhD about childhood within middle and late Iron Age Latvia, and today I wanted you to present just a small part and just one question that I'm working with within my PhD. And as I said, I'm not a bioarchaeologist, definitely. I'm more archaeologist, so I was struggling with how to incorporate my theme within this conference. And then I came across this quite new bioarchaeological wave called social bioarchaeology, which combines all bioarchaeology, archaeology, social archaeology, and social theory together. And therefore, I would like to dedicate my paper today to the social bioarchaeology with focusing more on social and archaeology and a little bit less on bio. So the goal of my today paper is to analyze two cemeteries, two children burials from two cemeteries, and to show how gender representation correlates with the age of these subadults. I chose these two cemeteries because the differences between gender representation within burials are quite quite big differences between these two examples. At first, a little bit about the material that I use in this analysis. First, the cemetery, Aizkrauklas cemetery, which is dated from the 3rd to the 10th century. Why I put the 3rd in the parentheses, because as you can see at the 3rd point, anthropological material was obtained only from the burials, which can be dated more or less starting with the 7th century. But archaeological evidences suggests that the Aizkrauklas cemetery was used also starting with the 3rd century. This cemetery is excavated entirely and with 459 burials. Anthropological material, unfortunately, was obtained only from less than half of burials. 18.5% of burials was identified as children burials. I call them archaeological children because this identification was made by the archaeologists who led the excavations there, and mostly this identification was based on archaeological material, less together with anthropological material. However, after analyzing all anthropological material which was obtained from the burials, it was dedicated that almost 19% could be biological children. Anthropological material which was used to detect the age of sub-adult was mostly teeth. And here you can see the disposition of burials within the cemetery. Marked and colored, the burials are children burials. And the second burial is Baltijas cemetery, which is excavated partially, but nevertheless with 743 burials. Again, unfortunately, anthropological material was obtained only again less than half from the burials, and 50.2% was identified by archaeologists as archaeological children and 11% as biological children. In this case, the age was detected by using also mostly teeth, but as well as long bones measurements. And here you can see disposition of burials in the second terrace of River Mamel and on the 3rd. Short insight about gender. Why I'm using word gender and not using word sex. So in a nutshell, sex refers to the biological characteristics that define man and woman and can be detected, of course, using anthropological material. On the other hand, gender refers to the socially constructed norms and behaviors, and gender tells man and woman how they must behave, how they must probably look and what they must do. And in archaeology, gender can be detected by using archaeological material. Everything becomes more difficult when we are working with children, because as I put this, I like very good this sentence that sex estimation is the holy grail of non-adult osteology. Although there are different methods that are used to sexing non-adults, still they are quite inaccurate, and still we can't talk about non-adult sex estimation by using osteological material. I'm not talking about DNA analysis, of course, now. So for now, I can talk only about gender attributes within child burials, and gender are usually detected by using gender grave goods, gendered ornaments, jewelry, as well as body orientation. Many archaeological, anthropological ethnological research shows that in prehistoric, also historic societies, younger children, usually this age really differs, but mostly it's up to 3-5 years. They are perceived as genderless group, which could be closer to the female gender. Today I'm not going to tell you more about these researches because it's really up to time, but yeah, you can trust me, there are researches about genderless groups. And I outlined one, I think, very good example, of very specific example, which was carried on Bronze Age cemetery, Mokarin, where only after 17 years of age, male burials became associated with male-gendered knives. Up to the 17 years, they were associated and they were represented with more or genderless or female type ornamentations and body burials furnishing. And now, yes, and this phenomenon that smaller children are perceived as genderless, as I told, it's not only in the prehistory, it's up to the 19th century, where small boys were dressed in the dresses, and which is in this case, this is not female clothes. This is actually gender, unisex clothes. And now to the study cases. Analyzing children burials at the Lesbian cemetery, it was detected that there were no children younger than 3 years of age, but I truly believe that it doesn't mean that children younger than 3 years of age weren't buried within the cemetery. It's just lack of anthropological material, and yeah, and it was the reason why it couldn't detect the younger children. However, there are really lack of infant graves and very small, very young children graves within the middle and late Iron Age Latvia, but this is a little different topic. However, very interesting topic. After analyzing these burials and detecting the age of children, it was detected that Lesbian cemetery shows previously mentioned phenomenon that smaller children are represented and probably perceived as genderless group. First, weapons as gendered objects in the boys' burials started appearing at the age of 5, but gendering completed only at the age of 9 years. Up to this age, more or less female type or genderless grave goods accompanied these small children. It is always very difficult to set the to notice the gendering and the social maturation in girls' burials, because if we trace the weapons at boys' burials, we can more or less say that yes, we could talk about gendering and something like that, but it's really hard to say the same about girls' burials. In Latvian archaeological literature, head ornaments sometimes are associated with social maturation, that only adult women, Latgalians, adult women, only wore this ornament. However, this could be discussed, and this must be discussed a lot, because I think there are problems with this association. But looking at the Lesbian cemetery, it was detected that the head ornaments really appears only after the age of 9, more or less. So maybe we can talk about gendering, and we can associate the head ornament with gendering, becoming older and growing. You may wonder why I'm using terms boys and girls if I previously said that there are genderless grave goods and we couldn't gender. Yes, although the burials furnishing really are genderless, even small children their body are orientated according to the common male-female body orientation, so females to the west and males to the east. So if we think a little bit about social theory, when each member of society can obtain and can represent different roles, for example, the biggest role on the first level is that each of member of society are member of society, then each of them are member of age group, of gender, of sex, of occupation, profession, so on, then maybe we can interpret this gender body orientation in a way that even these small children were included within common cemetery mortuary landscape, within common society. Therefore, they were placed according to the common society mortuary rules that were in this cemetery. On the other hand, their genderless burials furnishing could suggest that they really were perceived as individuals within this genderless group. Therefore, they weren't gendered at this age. Maybe we could see the similar situation as I previously described, show you the boys in the dresses, where also these small children not only were perceived as genderless, not only in the grave goods, but also in the daily life, and they weren't raised as according to their gender, but only as small children. On the other hand, we have other society in the similar, which existed in this more or less at the same period of time, where children gendering appears already at the young age, and there are really no genderless group of children. As I put it on the slide, the gendered objects appears already at the age of 1-2 years. Again, we can't say anything about infants because in this cemetery no infant were detected. But really, these small children burials were made according to the same rules which were used at the adult burials. So weapons like battle knives, axes, spears to the boys, and tools like awls, sickles to the girls. And yeah, I could say that younger children burials are quite wealthy and made a full set, of course, with different variations which were affected by social classes and material status and something like that. So we have these situations when lesbian children, small children, are perceived as genderless group without strictly division into genders, and Chunka and Ranger children, which are gendered from the beginning. Does it also suggest that these children, the Chunka and Ranger cemetery, were gender manifested also in the daily life? It is really hard to tell because burials material not always shows you something about truly about social life. But we could tell that apparently at the society which used Chunka and Ranger cemetery, there were no opinion, there were no perception about genderless group. even young children already were represented as future females and males. Talking about future possibilities, I'm very sure that DNA sexing would give unexpected results, and I hope that in some future it will be possible to add children sexing results to these. To support this, my opinion, I wanted to show you shortly about the DNA sexing analysis which were made at the Czech Republic, if I'm not mistaken, 2 or 3 years ago, and it really gave unexpected results. As you can see, those burials who were made as male gender burials, from them too were actually biologically female, so probably these females were raised as males, which is not uncommon for this culture at this time, but more unexpected twist came with female gender child burials, where actually only one of them were female and all of others were males, and which is more exciting that these weren't small males, and if you could say that they weren't gendered and they were still a genderless group, but no, actually they were males from the 5 till 15 years. So it is interesting that part of males were buried as males and part of males were buried as females. Yes, and I would like to finish on this unexpected twist with gender and sex, and with really great hope that I will get a possibility to present you something like as unexpected as Czech Republic.
Thank you. Question, please.
You mentioned 2 terms, gender and sex, so I wonder if these 2 terms are applied differently, only in archaeology or in general, in principle. Because in other fields like genetics, molecular sciences, they both are used equally.
Yeah, they actually came from social anthropology, and yeah, gender and sex in social anthropology meaning could mean the same, could be the same, but could not be the same as well. For example, male could be raised as female, another, because there are many different examples from different societies where really this happens, where females are raised as males and other way. And in archaeology also in last, I don't know, 20 years, this question are raised and studies are showing that there are burials which are accompanied with typical female, for example, burial furnishing. On the other way, on the same time, this individual are male biologically. So yeah, so it's not the same. It could be the same, but it could not be the same. Yes. Yeah. 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 Thank you.
Clear? More questions? Please.
Yes, I think it's interesting because many times children's bones have been taken to ancient DNA, and the Y chromosome comes quite often, so males are found more often. I don't know if this is statistically significant, but from the presentation and from the papers I read, it's quite common. So I wonder if the Y chromosome has something to do with the preservation of the bones.
Yeah, I really, I'm not able to answer to this question, unfortunately.
So, still questions? Thank you once more. And now, coffee break, 30 minutes.